This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Good afternoon. We've got a lot on our plate this Back to Work Monday. Let's jump right in. The Trump administration is doubling down on deportations. Attorney General Pam Bondi says she'll appeal all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, if need be, for the right to kick out of this country dangerous gang members who also happen to be here illegally.
The Supreme Court will get involved. This is an out-of-control judge.
Bondi, referring to Judge James Boasberg, who ruled recently the administration cannot use a 2-century-old law to deport Venezuelan nationals.
A federal judge trying to control our entire foreign policy, and he cannot do it.
Reporters are Tom Homan.
We're going to continue to arrest public safety threats and national security threats. We're going to continue to deport them from the United States.
National Security Advisor Mike Waltz.
And we cannot have district judges interfering with the commander-in-chief's actions to take care of, in the way he deems necessary, a terrorist organization.
Earlier this month, the president flew hundreds of alleged Tren de Aragua gang members to a supermax prison in El Salvador. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is touring that prison today. Anti-Israeli demonstrations are happening today at Columbia University in New York City. They're protesting that school's decision to crack down on anti-Semitism. E.J. Kimball is president of the group Combat Anti-Semitism.
Columbia University and many of these universities all across the country have failed to protect the Jewish students on campus.
Kimball says recent Gaza war protests are not just student-run, they are nationally organized.
These aren't just organic student-led protests. There are outside agitators who are coming onto these campuses, fomenting these protests.
Education Secretary Linda McMahon says recent concessions made by Columbia puts the Ivy League school on the right path toward getting its funding back.
That means that we are on the right track now to make sure the final negotiations to unfreeze that money will be in place.
Columbia's new policy includes a mask ban, new protest rules, and a greater security presence on campus. A senior Hamas official among the dead in an Israeli airstrike on a hospital in Khan Yunis, Gaza's second largest city. Trey Yingst at Fox News.
This comes as the Israelis are expanding their ground operations inside Gaza.
CBS's Imtiaz Tayeb.
Southern Gaza's largest, still functioning hospital on fire following the Israeli strike. Inside, chaos as dozens of the already sick and wounded suffered injuries and were rushed to safety. Half the staff treating patients here are international medics, including some American doctors. The Israeli military has confirmed it targeted the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis. It was part of an attempt to kill senior Hamas leader Ismail Barhoum, who was receiving treatment there after being wounded in an airstrike days earlier.
Today's attack brings to over 50,000 now the number of casualties in the Israeli-Hamas war. The U.S. and Russia holding high-level talks today, and Saudi Arabia aimed at winding down the war in Ukraine. The Putin regime's already agreed to pause long-range attacks on Ukrainian energy and civilian infrastructure. The FBI is warning Tesla owners today, be extra vigilant as that Elon Musk-owned car company becomes the target of left-wing violence.
I do think there's coordination. There is some type of conspiracy behind it.
Former FBI agent Rob D'Amico.
Who's communicating and who's inciting these people? Because there are definitely people behind this and not just the solo actors.
Liberal activists are planning a global day of action against Tesla next week. For the first time in more than a month, the Pope is out of the hospital. The 88-year-old is back at the Vatican after receiving treatment for double pneumonia.
Doctors say it's going to take time for him to regain full use of his voice. Next month in April, the Pope is set to meet with King Charles III and also host the Vatican's annual Easter celebrations, but of course, only if he is well enough.
Correspondent Stephanie Bennett. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says he's not going anywhere.
Look, I'm not stepping down. And let me just say this. I knew when I cast my vote against the government shutdown, there'd be a lot of controversy.
The top Democrat on Capitol Hill is under fire from the left for siding with Republicans on a spending bill.
Sometimes when you're a leader, you have to do things to avoid a real danger that might come down the curve. And I did it out of pure conviction as to what a leader should do.
Schumer's up for re-election in 2028, and there's speculation he could face a primary challenge from New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The first black Republican woman in Congress has died of brain cancer. Mia Love represented the state of Utah in the House for 2 terms. She was the daughter of Haitian immigrants. Mia Love was 49 years old. There's more evidence today that smoking pot is harmful to your health.
A new study found that people under the age of 50 who consume marijuana are about 6.2 times more likely to experience a heart attack than non-marijuana users. The study also shows young marijuana users are more likely to experience heart failure and stroke. I'm Mark Mayfield.
The Sweet 16 all set in the NCAA men's college basketball tournament. All 4 top seeds are moving on. Correspondent Sam Brock says after Sunday's games, there are officially no more perfect brackets.
The odds of a perfect bracket, by the way, 1 in 9.22 quintillion. That scenario went out the window last night when Kentucky defeated Illinois and, according to the NCAA, busted the last remaining perfect bracket.
How about that? On the court yesterday, top-ranked Florida knocked off 2-time defending champ UConn. That means there's going to be a new champion this year. And there was a buzzer beater out west in Seattle.
To the freshman queen who's driving, floats it. Oh! Maryland on the right side of a buzzer beater with life into the Sweet 16.
4th-seeded Maryland stunning 12th-ranked Colorado State on that last second shot. Randy's got more on the madness coming up in sports. Also ahead on the Noon Report, New York shield law. Panama makes history. And Shapiro's all in on AI.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams looking at a relatively mild afternoon. Chillier weather is coming. A couple of rain and snow showers mixed with a bit of sun in the mix, too. Forecast hotels are up in 10.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. News where you live next. Pennsylvania politicians are proposing legislation that permits physician-assisted suicide. Now, if approved, this bill would allow the terminally ill, those with less than 6 months to live, to kill themselves. Pro-lifers argue assisted suicide could lead to elder abuse and would fundamentally alter the doctor-patient relationship. New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed a bill that strengthens the so-called shield law that protects the anonymity of abortion doctors. Jason McGuire with New York Family.
Essentially, under this new law, what the governor is saying is that doctors who prescribe these abortion pills, especially out of state, will not have to put their name on the prescription any longer. It will be only the practice of the doctor, not the doctor's specific name.
The state of Louisiana recently sued New York over its Abortion Provider Protection Act. This after a woman in Louisiana suffered serious health complications after using abortifacients from New York.
Bear in mind that in that case, the New York doctor never even spoke to the woman who took the pills. That is not safety. That is not concern. We're not caring for women in this. We're caring about political agendas.
Many in the pro-life community fear that New York's shield law, in an effort to protect abortionists, will only encourage medical malpractice. Christian activists in New York are being encouraged to pray, vote, and engage the culture, even as state lawmakers lurch further away from biblical values.
We as individual believers have responsibility to be obedient, first of all, to what the Lord tells us to do, to take the burdens of our heart and activate for that. And so, no, you can change a life, you can change a family, you can change a community one heart at a time.
That's Bunny Pounds with Christians Engaged. She spoke recently to Christian activists during Legislative Day at the New York State Capitol.
I tell people everywhere, there's somebody on your ballot that needs you, whether that's a federal person, a state person, a county person, or a local person. There's somebody on your ballot that is not going to win or be prosperous in what they're trying to do if you're not the one voting for them.
Pounds admonishes people of faith to talk more, not less, about politics, because it's the only way, she says, Christian values will ever be represented headed in Albany. A Christian journalist has taken note of the rapid progression of the trans agenda in recent years.
A lot of people are really surprised by how fast it has grown, and we could not have even imagined the depth of some of the depravity that I have seen on the front lines as a journalist, having covered the gender identity movement and transgender dogma taking over our political and social institutions with brutal speed.
Brandon Showalter with the Christian Post tells Family Life News.
Natural law does have a way of biting back, and you would be surprised that even though I'm very much a believer in historic Christian sexual ethics, marriage between a man and a woman, very much believe that. We believe that at the Christian Post. We have a lot of LGB identified persons knocking on our doors these days saying, oh my goodness, let's talk, because the transing of kids has thrown me off my center of gravity.
Showalter says there's a backlash brewing over trans indoctrination in our culture today, and he says the pendulum is swinging back the other way in favor of Christian sexual ethics. A lawsuit's been dropped in Western New York over alleged misgendering of a transgender student. Family Life's Mark Webster.
Yeah, the East Aurora School District suspended the 8th grader for 5 days, in part for declaring that there are only 2 genders. When the district threatened to extend the suspension, his mother sued Superintendent Brian Russ and middle school principal Matthew Brown, calling the initial suspension an unconstitutional restriction on speech. However, her attorney tells the Buffalo News the suit has now been dropped in exchange for the district dropping plans to lengthen the suspension. He says the suit's chief aim of halting that additional suspension was achieved, and her son has returned to school. Mark Webster, Family Life News.
Thank you, Mark. A Steuben County, New York sheriff's deputy has just been arrested on child pornography charges. 34-year-old Stuart McHenry of Hornell was busted following a sting operation led by the FBI. If convicted, McHenry faces 5 to 20 years behind bars. In Corning, New York, dozens of demonstrators picketed recently outside the district office of Southern Tier Congressman Nick Langworthy. Those protesters showed up on Market Street to demand protections for Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. Langworthy says those fears are unfounded.
There's a lot of misinformation out there about what's going on with Medicare and Social Security and Medicaid, on which President Trump has been clear, and I've been clear. I don't support cuts to Medicaid, Social Security, or Medicare. Period. End of story.
The Republican representative has taken some heat of late for not holding more in-person town hall meetings throughout his 23rd congressional district. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro calls artificial intelligence one of the most significant technological developments of our time.
Human nuance and experience is essential to getting the most out of AI. This tool is a job enhancer, not a job replacer. And we believe that is critically important to remember as we go forward.
The governor speaking last week at Carnegie Mellon University outside Pittsburgh, where back in 2023, he signed an executive order that establishes responsible standards for AI use in the Commonwealth. Skiers glided down the slopes of Elk Mountain in Susquehanna County, PA. One last time over the weekend, that resort wrapped up its winter season on Saturday. Owner Bob DeLuca telling WNEP.
The thing about this year is the weather was more like winter we remember as kids. You know, in fact, there was a little bit of fresh snow almost every day, and it stayed cold. So that led to some great conditions, and we've had awesome conditions all season.
He says Elk Mountain managed to get in just under 100 days of skiing this season. Panama High School in Western New York's become the first in Section 6 to claim the New York State High School Championship in both boys basketball and football in the same academic year. Way to go, Panama. The Panthers won the Class D Hoops title over the weekend against Bridgehampton. That game was played at the Veterans Memorial Arena in Binghamton. It's the first state basketball championship in school history. We've got more sports next. It's the 2-minute drill right here on Family Life.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, the Sweet 16 is set for the March Madness basketball tournament. All 4 number 1 seeds are still alive. Michigan State, a 2 seed, is making its 16th trip to the Sweet 16 under head coach Tom Izzo. The lowest remaining seed is number 10, Arkansas. Looking at the big boys, the 76ers lost their fourth straight game, 132-119 to the Atlanta Hawks. Quentin Grimes led Philly once again. He had 26 points. Other winners, the Pistons, Cavs, Heat, Spurs, Celtics, Nuggets, and Thunder. On the ice, Buffalo's Ryan McLeod had a goal and 3 assists to help the Sabres beat the first-place Jets in Winnipeg 5-3. That ends the Jets' home point winning streak at 8 games. J.J. Peterka, Rasmus Dahlin, Tyson Kozak, and Alex Tuck all lit the lamp for Buffalo. Elsewhere, the Flyers fell to Chicago 7-4. That's 5 losses in a row for Philly. The Penguins lost in a shootout 4-3 to the Panthers. Brian Rush scored twice for the Pens. Other teams skating to victories, the Blues, Golden Knights, Hurricanes, and Kings. In NASCAR, Kyle Larson picked up his first win of the season, cruising to the checkered flag in Florida. Alex Bowman, Bubba Wallace, Chase Briscoe, and Denny Hamlin rounded out the top 5. And finally, this from the world of baseball. Pittsburgh Pirates ace Paul Skeens' rookie baseball card has sold for over $1 million at auction. He only played one season, and not even a full one, but Skeens is the National League Cy Young favorite entering this season, which gets underway on Thursday. That is a look at sports.
All right, be here before you know it. Thank you, Randy. Still to come on the Noon Report, Trump lawyers defend deportations. Democrats in disarray over who should be the party leader. And Dr. Ralph Kerr says a proposed cell phone ban at school might not happen this year in New York. We're talking about it on Issues in Education coming up.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Conservative New York Times columnist Ross Douthat once described certain events as scissor stories. Headline statements, ideas, or scenarios that are, and I quote here, perfectly calibrated to tear people apart. Regardless of the specifics, those on the left feel obligated to react to these kinds of events one way, and those on the right feel just as obligated to react the opposite way. But above all, and this is key to scissor events, everyone feels that they have to react, and that means today they feel obligated to comment on social media. The recent visit by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to the Oval Office certainly fits the bill of a scissor event. The meeting was incredibly significant given all the geopolitical stakes, but like most issues when it comes to war, international relations, and geopolitics, it was also quite complicated. But that didn't stop legions of social media users across the political spectrum with various degrees of understanding, training, and education from immediately posting their hot takes. Noticing how many fellow clergy jumped into this online fray, theologian and pastor Kevin DeYoung offered these words of caution, quote, "Political punditry is a legitimate calling. It's just not the pastor's calling. The man who comments constantly on the things everyone is talking about is almost assuredly not talking about the things the Bible is most interested in talking about," end quote. Pastors, DeYoung insisted, are not pundits. Their primary work is to preach the Word of God, lead the church in worship and sacrament, and minister to the needs of their flocks. Now, of course, we should absolutely stay informed. All Christians should. Ideas, events, elections, all of these things have very real consequences. Being knowledgeable is part of being a responsible citizen. It's part of being a responsible voter. It's part of being a responsible Christ follower. But we need not get sidetracked by every scissor event. At the very least, wisdom tells us to not pick up our phones every time a controversy comes calling. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Today's Breakpoint was co-authored by Shane Morris. For more resources like this one, visit us at breakpoint.org.
Thank you, John. Outside we go next, Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast. The call for this afternoon, variable cloud cover, sun at times, a couple of scattered showers, and breezy. Temperatures peaking in most spots in the 50s before dropping, and then a chillier night tonight. An evening shower, a couple of flurries later. Clouds breaking overnight, low temperatures, upper 20s and 30s. For tomorrow on Wednesday, a mix of sun and clouds across central and eastern Pennsylvania. Variably cloudy elsewhere in the region with a couple of rain and snow showers. High temperatures ranging in the mid-30s to the middle 40s.
priorities. Thank you kindly, Kevin. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. Lots going on Monday, the 24th of March. The escalating legal showdown continues over President Trump's immigration crackdown. A 3-judge panel is hearing arguments today from White House lawyers who want to resume those deportation flights to El Salvador. Attorney General Pam Bondi defends the kicking out of this country hundreds of suspected gang members.
261 reasons why Americans are safer today, and that's because those people are now in an El Salvador prison.
A D.C. judge last week ruled the migrant flights were unconstitutional. The Trump administration, those flights are necessary for national security reasons. There are growing calls on Capitol Hill for Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer to resign as head of the Democratic Party.
Are you feeling pressure to step down?
Look, I'm not stepping down.
The New York Democrat on NBC's Meet the Press program, Schumer's vowing to fight on despite pressure from the left.
Shine, resign, the people say it's time.
We need new leadership, and the time is right now.
The 74-year-old Brooklyn Democrat's under fire for voting with Republicans on a spending bill that averted a government shutdown. NBC's Haley Jackson says the Democratic Party is a party in disarray.
New NBC polling shows only about a quarter of voters, 27%, have positive views of the party. That is Democrats' lowest rating in our poll in more than 3 decades.
There's speculation Senator Schumer may face a primary challenge from New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Pope Francis back home at the Vatican after a 5-week stay in the hospital for double pneumonia. Reporter Kelly Kobiella has more from Rome.
That's right. The Pope is back home, but he is not 100%. He's still recovering. And with Easter just a few weeks away, it's not yet clear whether the Pope will be strong enough to lead the faithful.
Vatican spokesman Matteo Bruni.
He is not totally healed. He still has to convalesce for about 2 months. We are definitely at the end of a phase of a papacy, most probably the final phase. Even if he lives for some time, it's very doubtful that he will be able to carry out his duties like before.
The 88-year-old Pope is scheduled to meet early next month with the King of England. The first black Republican woman ever elected to Congress has died of brain cancer. Mia Love was the daughter of Haitian immigrants. She represented the state of Utah for 2 terms in the House. Mia Love was 49. The genetic testing company 23andMe has filed for bankruptcy. Correspondent Nancy Chen on what that means for millions of customers.
The Attorney General of California, where 23andMe is headquartered, urged customers to request their information be purged. He says they should consider invoking their rights and directing the company to delete their data and destroy samples of their genetic material.
23andMe was founded in 2006 and went public in 2021, but it's never turned a profit. More protests at Columbia University today after that Ivy League school rescinded some anti-Israeli policy.
Some Columbia University faculty members plan to speak out after the school announced it would meet Trump administration demands with plans to hire 36 new campus police officers to deal with protesters, limit locations where demonstrations are allowed, and banning people from wearing masks at protests. Education Secretary Linda McMahon says Columbia is on the right track to regain those federal funds after the administration revoked $400 million due to pro-Palestinian protests happening on the school's campus. I'm Jennifer Bolsoni.
You're listening to the Noon Report for Monday on Family Life. And welcome back to another edition of Issues in Education. Mondays during the Noon Report, we spotlight the issues impacting our schools with Dr. Ralph Kerr at the Teaching and Learning Institute. It's a tough job, Ralph, but somebody's got to do it, and we're so happy that somebody is you, because it is a crazy world out there right now when it comes to education. Of course, we had the president signing that executive order last week, dismantling the Department of Education. We're going to get to that in a minute, but first I want to talk state stuff. The New York State budget is due in just over a week, and right now it looks like lawmakers and the governor cannot get on the same same page when it comes to that proposed cell phone ban at school. What's the issue here, Ralph?
Well, the issue is there's a lot of disagreement about banning cell phones in school. The governor's proposed a total ban. The Senate is saying that there should be limited use of cell phones, like between classes. And the Assembly, which I really support, says let's leave it to the local districts to decide, because, in fact, many of the districts already have policies in place.
Next month, Ralph, it's getting close. The deadline for interested candidates to get their nominating petitions in for school board in New York, the deadline is April. That election will happen on school budget day in May. How does this nominating process work in Pennsylvania? Pardon my ignorance here, because this is a year where school board elections are also happening there. That vote happens on election day in November. Talk, if you would, about the difference, if there is any, in the nominating process.
Yeah, there are several differences. Unfortunately, I hope people that were interested paid attention when we talked about this a month or so ago, because actually the deadline for filing in Pennsylvania closed on March 11th.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Then they get to the primary, which is the third Tuesday in May, and then, as you said, the election is not till November. So that's very different, and it's only on the odd years that election takes place. One of the other really big differences, which I don't agree with at all, is that you have to align yourself with either a Democratic or the Republican Party. So it's very much politically oriented. I much prefer the New York system, where people don't have to declare, allegiance to some party. They can come in and really, literally be independent.
Yeah, independence is a good thing for sure when it comes to education.
That's true.
The Pennsylvania School Boards Association last week issued its State of Education report, and for the third straight year, it listed mental health, budget pressures, and staffing shortages as the biggest challenges to education. The name of this program is Issues in Education. I want to ask you, Ralph, what do you think are the top three issues facing our public schools today?
Well, the mental health issue is part of what I would rank as a number one, and that, without question in my mind, is we need to improve the academic performance of our students. It's pathetic. It really is. So the number one should be academic.
Yeah.
And then I had allocation of resources, but that's different than money, because allocation means use the money that you already have and allocate it in a more appropriate way, not just always be asking for more money. And then we're going to talk about the impact of the Department of Education being dismantled. That's going to have tremendous impact in all of the states, and I would put that up as number three.
Yeah, let's do a little bit of a deep dive on that one, Ralph, because that executive order was issued last Thursday by the president in the Oval Office. Of course, it takes an act of Congress to make it official. Now, the president says things like Pell Grants and aid for special needs students, Title I funding, that's not going to be affected at all. But things like school lunch programs, other things, are there things that will get impacted even without congressional action here, simply by virtue of that executive order that was signed last week?
I think there are some impacts. The president can just move a lot of those functions to other departments and really, if needs be, just retain the education department as just a sort of a shell of itself. In my mind, he's on the right track when president of the teachers union, Randy Weingarten, is so upset about this whole thing. And many people are saying that the reason they're upset is because it's just been a trough of money, which has gone not so much for individual teachers, which need to get more money in their salaries, but for a lot of other things that the union is really pressing. And I think that's why you see the teachers union all over this. They're really concerned about the impact this is going to have.
Yeah, I know you support this move, but in a state like New York, where it's deep, deep blue, would you rather have education policy coming from D.C. or Albany? Because there's a lot of people in New York think that D.C. would be better than Albany. What do you say to that?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag, really. I really liked last week when the Secretary of Education was talking, and someone mentioned about, moving the money back to parents. I really kind of like that idea. Let parents choose where they're going to spend the money, whether it's in public education or something else. certainly putting it out to New York State, I would be really concerned about as well, unless there are some strings attached, and I'm sure there will be, so it'll be a good thing in the end.
Yeah, it'll be a good conversation to have. I'm sure anxious to see what the congressional action looks like on that front. Right. We had so many issues discussed today. Again, interested in running for school board in New York. That clock is ticking, Ralph. If folks want to learn more about that process, where can they find you online?
Yeah, they can simply go to yrun.org, yrun.org.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Kerr. Issues in Education comes your way Mondays during the Noon Report. You can subscribe, listen to, and share this feature, as well as all our original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. In the wake of a cold front, some chillier air will be arriving over the next 24 hours. The skies will be unsettled. Some sun at times, a couple of rain and snow showers in the mix as well, and there'll be a breeze as well. The call for this afternoon, variable cloud cover, some sun at times, a couple of scattered showers, and breezy. Temperatures peaking in most spots in the 50s before dropping, and then a chillier night tonight. An evening shower, a couple of flurries later. Clouds breaking overnight, low temperatures, upper 20s and 30s. For tomorrow on Wednesday, a mix of sun and clouds across central and eastern Pennsylvania. Variably cloudy elsewhere in the region with a couple of rain and snow showers. High temperatures ranging in the mid-30s to the middle 40s.
Thank you, Kevin. Finally at noon, a Wisconsin man owns a record that continues to get bigger every year. Here's Family Life's Brian Query.
In 1972, Donald Gorski purchased his first car, and to celebrate, he made a decision that would shape the rest of his life. He stopped at McDonald's and bought 3 Big Macs. What he didn't realize at the time was that this simple act would turn into a one-of-a-kind obsession, because from that day on, Donald has eaten at least 1 Big Mac daily without missing a single day, and has now passed 35,000 Big Macs. He owns the Guinness World Records for most Big Macs in a lifetime, and he has no plans to stop, eating 1 for lunch and 1 for dinner each day. Gorski says he walks 6 miles a day to make up for the calories. He even proposed to his wife at McDonald's, and yes, he's kept every carton and every receipt from the past 53 years. For Gorski, Big Macs have become more than just food. They're a part of his story. And when asked what advice he'd give someone about challenging the record, he simply said, "Don't." Brian Query, Family Life News.
I love that. Thank you very much, Brian. Don't challenge my record. It's mine. And that's our world. The world we live in. Monday, March 24th. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report. Heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.